Good morning.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
It's kind of funny to have us here with our heads between us, behind us. It's like it's a mirror. It's weird. But I'd like to be that young again.
Me too. How
Like
many
that
years?
was a couple of years
Okay,
ago.
that was...
It was pre-pandemic.
It was, I'll tell you when it was. That was the first Denim and Diamonds after my husband passed away. It was 6 years ago.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, I'd like to be 6 years younger.
And
but
I'd
I don't
like
think
to have
you want to
that
write.
makeup and hair. I
Right?
remember they spent about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that dress was custom made for me. I had to
You
get it
looked
back.
stunning in that dress.
I don't think I've ever been more glamorous than that night.
It was you looked absolutely
And you
beautiful.
look stunning too, my friend.
Well, I didn't have a team of people doing my hair and makeup, and I'm not a Barbie to begin with. Where I was just saying, I always say we could dress you up in anything. You're like a Barbie,
But
and
we
you
matched.
walked,
We
you
wear
walked.
blue.
We did well. Like we have a Vulcan mind meld.
We do.
So anyway, we're welcome you guys. We're here and so excited for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nancy.
How about that? And we've got two amazing guests that are
We
going to be
do.
joining us, plus a lot of news stories that be
Yes.
prepared. Usually it's me that's going to rant. I hear that this one is going to rant
I
today.
came in ranting
And
on all three
so,
stories.
So we're ready to go with that. We want to tell you that we are pre-recording this the night before we're showing it. So you guys are going to see it on Thursday morning for the first time live. It's Wednesday evening when we're recording this because that's when we can record and our guests can be here. But it doesn't mean that we don't want to interact with you. I'm going to be watching live with you. So please feel free to be writing in while we premiere this live, while you're watching it right now, because there's a lot to talk about. Two amazing guests. Should we tease that a little bit? We've got
let's tease it.
Erin DeLand is going to be joining us from Play.Connect.Grow.
I am very excited about this program, Shannon.
Well, I've always said that play is a very important part of development and that it's something, no matter which type of therapy you've gone ahead with, whether it's ABA or floor time or whatever, play should be a part of every program. I feel that it's really important. It's the reason why we do the toy guide and the
Right,
Festival of
right.
Toys. I'm all about the toys.
All about play, all
and
about
teaching
the toys.
parents how to play with their kids, because that's hard sometimes. When my son was little, I was the favorite aunt. I could play with anybody's child except my own.
Right.
And I had to learn how to play with my child. So I think this is wonderful. He's going to talk with us about how he and his organization can help you to play with your child.
And it's very accessible. Very accessible.
Really wonderful. And then our second guest that's going to be joining us is Ed Lynch. He's the founder and executive director of Mychal's Learning Place, and he's going to be talking with us very specifically about their programs, and you have a special connection with them.
I do.
Which should we reveal now or later?
Well, I'll tease it. The one and only Auspauh-Jackson, creator of Y Art, is going to be in an art show a little bit later this month at Mychal's Place.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yes, so we're very excited about that.
And
Mychal's Place is doing great work. So
There
we're
we
gonna
are.
talk about that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Shall we start with the news?
Let's
so
start.
we can.
You know what? I was looking at shows of us the other day.
Yes.
And the ones that we were doing on Zoom, my head was down looking at the articles. So I'm going to try not to do that this time.
Well, we're here, and we try to keep it real, and we're covering news stories. We like to reference where we get them from. This first one, it was all over the news this week. Every outlet, but specifically we were looking at the NBC News article by Aria Bendix. So you want to take a first crack at
Why
this,
not?
Nancy?
Here's the headline. Autism rates have tripled. Duh. Is it now more common, or are we just better at diagnosis? Now, how many times has this question been asked, and how many times has this question been answered? We know that autism is an epidemic. We know the rates have risen dramatically. We know there has to be more. Dr. Graham-Pichet has said herself, it's not just about better diagnosis. And if anybody should know, it's Doreen Graham-Pichet.
Yes.
So that's my first point. My second point is, the house is on fire, people. How bright does the fire have to burn before we do something more?
Well, I've been saying for at least 15 years, if we just made all of the politicians who are in office, and I'm talking everything from a state senator, president, everything, down to the mayor, if everyone, as part of their being a servant of the state had to have, and we'll make it a sliding scale, that you have to have an hour that you spend with a child on the spectrum. And you can have somebody there to help you to do that. But if everybody had to spend an hour or two, originally I used to say a weekend, and then I went, okay, people aren't going to do that. But I would be willing to bet you if we were able, like what an education that would be for them. And I think that they would get much more interested. What we have seen over the years as these numbers go up is that more and more politicians have children in their family or friends of family. And I think that we are gaining some traction in this area, but it's not enough. It's not enough.
No, it's not. And it goes on to say that it is most likely, because doctors have gotten better at identifying autism, so this article does state that. It goes on to say, though, that genetic factors certainly can play a role, and then it finally gets to environmental factors. Probably aren't significant contributors, but they could aggravate underlying genetic risk. Okay. This has been discussed, this has been talked about for decades now, right?
Yes.
I mean, I went to my first Defeat Autism Now conference when Wyatt was 4, so how many years ago is that? Wyatt's 21.
Yeah.
And this was being discussed at DAN
Absolutely.
conferences.
I don't think this is anything new.
We know environmental triggers. This is not a postulation, we know it.
Yeah.
So why? Okay, we have all this money out there. We've got the Bill Gateses, we've got the Elon Musk, we've got all these brilliant scientists. Can somebody please put the money behind this? Can somebody please put the minds behind this?
Yeah, and I think that there is some money and there are some minds. We've moved the dial exponentially, but the conversation hasn't moved very far. I do want to say that the reason why this is so in the news right now, again, is because there was a new study that was just reported in last Thursday in the Journal of Pediatrics that said that especially the incidence in the New York area, the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, and I don't know what is the third in the tri-state area?
New York, New Jersey, and not Delaware, no.
I don't know. But in any case, that the numbers have so sharply gone up even since the last CDC report. And they are higher than where they are in many different places in the country. And everybody's asking why.
Who's got the most pollution? Who's got the most environmental
And we
insults?
know, because the CDC, and we're expecting, by the way, very soon, really at any time now, that the CDC is going to come out with new numbers. This is the buzz that we've heard. And there's been all this sort of buzz about what's the new number going to be, because right now in our country, it's 1 in 54. What number was it when Wyatt was diagnosed?
Oh my God, I don't even remember.
For me, it was 1 in 110.
Yeah, I think it was about 1 in 110.
And I remember that was a huge jump from where it had been before that.
That was shocking.
And when I was just out of college, I remember that the number was 1 in 10,000. So, 1 in 110 really got my attention, especially when my kid was one of the one. And I think that, then very quickly it went to 1 in 86, and then we were at 60 something, and now here we are at 1 in 54. But new numbers are about to come out. But the CDC gets reports from 11 different places, and the numbers aren't the same in different places. Like we've always seen in New Jersey that it's significantly higher. And everybody says, well, why is that? Is it because, well, it's probably because New Jersey has all this funding for autism and they have all these services. So people are moving there when they think their child has autism. And my thing for that is, well, then there's a bigger problem there, isn't there? Because if you're in Kentucky and there's no services for you there, yeah, you would move to New Jersey. That doesn't mean that it's only in New Jersey. Right? You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
So anyway, but the language that we use, I don't know if we want to get into this because we have these two guests, but the language that we use when we're out and about in the world is really important. And I know that for a long time, there are a group of people in the autism community that get really upset when people say vaccines don't cause autism.
It does say in this article, and I don't know where the Senate says, that it has been proven that vaccines do not contribute to autism.
Yeah.
So they're saying in no
Yeah.
way, shape, or form do vaccines contribute to autism.
Right.
Now, we're not going to get into this debate right here.
No.
It's
too much.
in-depth.
But I do need to say that from my opinion here at the Autism Network is that they have proven that autism isn't caused by vaccines. That's a very important word. Cause. Cause to scientists means something very different than contributes. So, and we absolutely know that the vaccine court has paid out claims for contributing to autism.
Right.
So those are two things there that you can weigh that, science, if vaccines caused autism, then every child who got a vaccine would have autism. So that is why scientists say it does not cause it. But the vaccine court has absolutely paid out claims for not causation, for contributing to autism.
So what do you think about this statement? Autism has nothing to do with vaccines.
Well, I think that's a reporter who really hasn't done their research.
Thank you.
But I also don't think that, I think we've proven that every single individual who gets a vaccine doesn't end up with an autism diagnosis. We know that. So, and I feel like if we're responsible when we're talking about these terms, we will get into less butt heads. But for so long, people said, it doesn't cause, and so many people got upset about that now we have reporters who are saying it has nothing to do with it. And I think that that's irresponsible on
It's
their part.
irresponsible, and I'm just going to end this with this statement.
Yeah.
When Wyatt was diagnosed with autism, I saw lots of doctors, I saw lots of therapists, I saw lots of experts. Who I learned the most from was autism moms like you.
Well,
And what I learned the most was from experience. And I will tell you that in 14 years of being executive director of Autism Care and Treatment Today, 90%, I would say, of those families felt that the vaccines had in some way contributed to their child's autism. So that's
absolutely.
anecdotal.
I think that's anecdotal, and I think it's important. I also think it's really important to look at the studies and to look at the science and look at the research. And the study that I always go back and refer to that nobody cares about anymore, but was the Claire Langer study that was paid for by Autism Speaks. It was called the Twin Study, and it showed very clearly, because they looked at 4 different sets of twins, and it shows very clearly that autism is partially a genetic and partially an environmental disorder that caused by the two together. So anybody who poo-poos any of that needs to look at that study. And nobody wants to talk about that study anymore, but it showed it very clearly.
I think it was, is it Science Today? Is that the magazine?
I don't know.
Okay, they said if genetics is the gun,
Yes.
environment is the trigger. I
Yes.
think that's a brilliant statement.
Yep.
I think that's really on.
There we go.
Okay, we better move on.
Yes, we have to move on, because the next story is going to make our heads all explode and fall off.
I'm ranting today.
And this one is from CBS News, but it was reported in many different places
You
as
wanna
well.
go with it?
Yeah, parents of child with autism say neighbors in Port Washington are pushing back on a fence installed to keep their daughters safe.
Okay, people.
Yeah. This is so tragic. This is a town in Port Washington, New York, that they have a city ordinance that people are not allowed to put up fences. And they pride themselves on being a fenceless little hamlet. And it's a very big deal to them and their home values. It's a very big deal to everybody. But along comes a little girl who is diagnosed on the spectrum, and her team of people, experts, have looked at her and, they live in a place where in New York where it's cold during a lot of the year, and you're housebound and things of this nature, and they would like for this little girl to get outside
She's a
more.
bolter, apparently.
Yeah. And we know, those of us who know, we know that when you have somebody who elopes, it's life and death.
Yeah, my son was an eloper.
Yeah, it's life and death. And my son My son eloped. He only got away from me once, but it's enough. Once is enough, and you feel it for the rest of your life.
Oh, well, we were at LaGuardia, and Wyatt almost ran into full-on traffic.
It's
Once he
terrible.
took up the street and almost ran out onto the 101.
Yeah, it's hard. And these are real issues. These are not imagined issues. And the city ordinance has an exclusion thing where if you need it for some reason, you can apply. And they thought that they had clear sailing, this family, that to put up their fence. They put up their fence, and lo and behold, there's a group of neighbors, I think is it 12, I don't remember from the story, neighbors that have signed a petition saying that,
It's an eyesore.
and they keep saying,
It's 4 feet high.
yeah, they keep saying it's not that we have any objection to a child with autism in the neighborhood. Oh, that's so big of you. It's just that the fence is too big, they don't like the color, and it's too close to the road.
Right. It ruins their little picture-perfect world, doesn't it, Shannon?
And I just want to go, okay, so what color do you want it to be? How short do you want it to be? Do you want to risk the girl going over it? And how far away from this? It's so much BS. And in the news story that I watched, they went around and tried to interview people in the neighborhood, and everybody was screaming, going, we're not going to say anything. We don't want to be on camera. We don't want this in our neighborhood. And the poor family is sitting there saying, they expect to win. They're going back in and they expect to win to keep their fence because, come on, it only makes sense, right? But the whole point of the story is at what cost? And the mom says, when you know that your neighbors, they stop speaking to the family. She said, we're trying to have this little girl be a part of the community and we've been ostracized. And to know that they didn't come to us and say, hey, can we work together with you on this fence to, maybe there's a way we can make it a little less fence, although get over yourselves. I think the families that complained understand how stupid it is that they complained, which is why they didn't go to the other family and say, hey, can we work together on this?
Well, the article ends with, and we'll button it with this, it says, a hollow victory, you think?
Yeah.
And the parents say to be completely isolated from a neighborhood that we wanted to have our daughter enjoy is beyond hurtful and makes me sad for my daughter. And you know what? Neighborhoods like this and people like this make me sad for the world.
It does. I also see where this is an opportunity to learn because what has happened.
Well, you always do.
Well, here's the thing. What else good can you take away from this? Here is what has happened is that now this has national attention.
True.
Which means that all of those people are being called out for being the horrible people that they are, in that they're putting their they're not even their needs, it's their wants before what this little girl needs. And I think they're ashamed. And maybe another community will think twice before they say, oh, well, I want to be able to look down and see no fences more than I want your child to be safe. I think, if we had endless amounts of money, I would want to visit this town and put up posters of all the children who have drowned after eloping or been hit by a car and say, do you want this little girl's blood on your hands? But then that would be really incendiary.
It would, but that would be so you.
Right? Wouldn't that be like super? Because I think, look, there's ignorance. And they're thinking the most important part of their day is the value of their home and the pride of their community. And, there was a time when maybe that would have been the most important thing to us too. Now we've learned that sometimes other things are more important and they just need to learn it too.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing out that this is a teachable moment, but I just want to ask these people, where's the compassion?
Well, I want to ask them to take their heads out of their rear ends, but
all right, next one, another one. Okay, I'm on a rant.
Yes. I've been on a rant about this for a while, so.
I know, and I'd like you to really address it
Yeah.
because you're the expert here. Insurance companies versus autism therapy.
Yeah.
And the bottom line on this is obviously the epidemic, the fact that the numbers are 1 of every 44 children has autism, and how after intense public advocacy, now all 50 states mandate, keyword, coverage of ABA in at least some state-regulated plans. Court decisions have made it clear that mental health coverage in federally regulated self-funded plans must include coverage for ABA. It goes on to explain a little bit about ABA, how it is medically necessity, how it's not cheap, but it's worth it. It does say that. Kudos to this article for saying that. And they're talking about the cost. This is actually an editorial, right, Shannon?
This is an opinion piece in the New York Daily News.
Very well written, Linda Copeland.
And I chose this before I realized who wrote it, because this is written by Dr. Linda Copeland, who used to appear on our show as a regular. We called her the unicorn because she is a pediatrician and she is also a BCBA. And I think that's really rare in the world. So we called her the unicorn, and she was a regular on the show and joined us on a regular basis to answer questions. And I didn't realize that this was an article written by her, but of course it makes perfect sense.
And she says one line here that I think sums up the article for me. It is unconscionable when insurers try to shirk paying for care.
Yes, and this is I hear this every day. I am so saddened by this, because we worked so hard so that other parents could get insurance for their kids and not go through what we went through in the early years. And then we got the insurance, and what we didn't realize was how crafty insurance can be. And insurance has been great because they've done all these things on the side, like they keep going back to the providers and saying, oh, we have to lower the amount that we can give you for the therapy that you're providing. And if you can't do it, then we'll go with another provider who can. So everybody tightens their belts a little bit. So what we've arrived at now post-pandemic is that most ABA providers cannot keep behavior technicians because they're getting paid more to stock shelves at Target.
That's right.
That's where it's at. And it's not because the ABA providers are just completely incompetent. And when you go and they don't have a therapist to work with your child, it's not because they're incompetent, it's because the insurance companies aren't giving them enough money to make that job worthwhile for the people doing that job. And that is where they're putting the squeeze on. And if parents don't rise up and say, there are all these things that you can do. If you're not getting enough hours, you need to be complaining on a daily basis to your insurance company. You need to be saying to your insurance company that by not providing you with therapists, that it is denial of access to care, that you have a prescription from your doctor, and if they don't have a therapist, then they need to pay people more. And it's not gonna change until parents rise up and say, enough, my child, you know, I have this insurance, I have a prescription for it. It doesn't matter. You have to write me a prescription to go get it down the street with somebody, and it doesn't matter how much they're paying them. And insurance will do it. You'll win if you say denial of access to care, and they will eventually raise the rate. We've seen this happen before. But if parents don't rise up, I'm watching ABA providers roll up their stuff and say, we're out of here, we're done, we can't hire people, we can't do it, because people, this is difficult work. People have to have big patience, and they need to get paid for their work. And if they don't, they're going to go work someplace else. I have watched so many people in the last few years leave the field to go work at a restaurant.
I know.
Talented individuals, because they can make more at a restaurant than they could helping your child. And we can say that the ABA providers need to step up. I just don't think they're in a position to do it. They don't have the right negotiation power. Parents do. So if you're a parent and your child is not getting enough hours, you never have enough behavior technicians, you need to put your insurance on speed dial and start putting the screws to them. Right now. Okay. Now I ranted.
Woo!
You were going to rant, and instead I did. Okay.
Well, thanks, Shannon, for picking these stories. They were great. I think we could do an hour on each one, quite frankly.
Really could. But we've got two great guests. Erin DeLand, did I get that right? I'm sorry? Oh, Wyatt. Thank you.
Okay, all right, let's see. We're going to look at some of Wyatt's recent works. And I want to tell you,
Let's... There we go.
That's Gunther. Isn't Gunther cute? He's kind of ugly cute.
No, he's adorable. You just want to pinch his little cheeks and give him a schmoosh.
Now, Gunther is the grand dog of a guy I grew up with in Richmond, Virginia. And he just says the family loves Gunther. Gunther makes everything better in that family. So Wyatt painted Gunther.
I love that. Oh, he's just precious. Oh
Oh
my
my
goodness.
God, this is Sherman and Grant. Are they the
Okay.
cutest?
Boy, Sherman and Grant. Where are they? Where?
They are from Richmond,
Oh,
Virginia.
I thought so. Sherman and Grant. Okay.
Yeah, it's that Confederate generals. Yeah, well, okay, they're racist,
Okay.
but that's okay.
Okay. All right. But they're beautiful dogs.
Aren't they beautiful? No, my friend Jane Katz Ayers, who's actually a different.
Nobody's racist.
Distant,
She was kidding.
I'm kidding.
Yes, kidding.
Sherman and Grant, it was a Confederate joke.
Right.
But they are adorable, and their owner is a wonderful woman, and she commissioned them and 2 other golden labs for her best friend. So Wyatt did these, and also 2 other dogs for her. Oh, there's the other ones. Aren't they adorable?
They are adorable. I love their little
These were
noses.
Christmas gifts for people.
Absolutely love that. Okay, is there another one?
I think there's one more.
Okay.
Oh, this is my godson, Danny Reed, R-E-A-D.
Well,
Hello.
isn't he the cutest thing?
Is he the cutest?
Yes. And the dog is good too. Right.
And that is, oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? McKinley.
McKinley.
That's McKinley.
Look at that grin on that dog's face.
He grins. So he came over to get the painting. Danny came to visit us. And Danny's named after my late husband, Reed Jackson, and shares Wyatt's middle name. And Wyatt worships Danny Reed Tello. So he wanted to do a particularly good job on Ken, as they call him. And what an adorable dog he is.
What a great, he's really captured something amazing. Look
Yeah.
at that painting. That grin is just, that's $1 million grin going there.
So if you would like to commission a piece of Wyatt, oh, Dolly! How could I
we
forget
forget
Dolly?
Dolly?
Look at that face.
Look at that blue. Wow,
Now
how
that
gorgeous
is one of
that?
my best friend, Pamela K. Brown, and her husband, David Hughes. Their dog, they have had, this is their 3rd Scotty. And as David says, none of them have lived to the age of 10, but they love these dogs and appreciate these dogs. And David wrote an incredible note to Wyatt to explain what Scotties are like that I read to Wyatt. He said, it's not that they're disobedient, it's just that they take their time in deciding whether what you're asking them to do is worthwhile.
Sounds right. I just love the blue.
Isn't the blue
this.
great?
The blue
And this is an
amazing.
all-black dog, but
Right.
Wyatt
The
and his
catching the
teacher
blue.
Paola decided to put that blue in, which
It's
I think
just
is
amazing.
Yeah. This is one of my
Absolutely
favorite
beautiful.
portraits Wyatt's ever done, and it's been framed. It's hanging in their home in Southport, Connecticut.
I just love it. Well, and it's worth a lot now, but it's going to be worth more in the coming years. You have something coming up that we can only tease about. We can't really tell, but you've got some exciting things happening with Wyatt.
We do.
Really, really fun.
We do. I have a project with my son that hopefully is going to make an impact on a national level.
There we go.
We'll be announcing it after a few more things have been done and submitted. So
I've always said, you name that boy Wyatt Jackson, and talk about, that is the name of a great American painter. It just is, right? Beautiful, beautiful name. And he's lived up to it beautifully, and he will continue to. So
he has, and just one more thing to say about that to all the autism parents that are listening. At one time, I did think of my son as a burden. And now that burden has become my biggest blessing.
That's right. And that can happen.
It sure
It
can.
is not necessarily a fast track, but it is, I'm glad that that's the space that you're in, because I know you've been through it. You've been through it on a lot of different fronts, especially as a single mom, a widow. So, amazing to see this happening for you. We're
I'm
all
proud.
thrilled. Yeah.
I'm proud.
And we're all excited for you and for Wyatt, who is a brilliant young man. And handsome
And a
and
good
talented.
young man.
Yes, he is. He's a good
decent
soul.
young man.
Yep. Which is so much better than so many other things, right?
I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we are going to pause here. I think, are we playing some sort of thing? And we're going to bring in our first guest who's going to be with us. And that is Erin DeLand, who's here with us from Play.Connect.Grow. I have no idea what we're going to, but take a look at this.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We've calmed down after those news stories, and we are happy to announce our guest. Welcome our first guest, Aaron DeLand. I want to give you a little bit about his background, very impressive one. Aaron began his career working with children as a classroom teacher for preschool and kindergarten, but then he moved on to work with children with autism in 1999. He knew immediately, you knew it was your calling, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And he began working in ABA, and then he realized after a few years of that, not for him, not the approach for him, and that's when he found play therapy for autism at the Autism Treatment Center of America. He trained and worked there for 5 years, and then he ventured out on his own. He developed a simple but effective play method based off his training experience and research. Over the last 2.5 decades, Aaron has worked in 11 countries, all over half of the United States, teaching parents and professionals the value of play with children. And he's worked with over 1,000 families. So I think that's a pretty impressive background. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me.
We're thrilled to have you here.
Why does sharing enjoyment have to be, in your opinion, the most important goal for children on the spectrum?
Well, I can talk about this for a long time, so careful what you're
Well,
asking me.
we'll go on with the next
Yeah,
question
yeah.
soon.
So I always talk about sharing enjoyment as the number one goal, or sort of the first stop in your play session, because that's really what is the main driver of its effectiveness. And the reason why that is, and this is backed up by some research out of Emory University on oxytocin production. And specifically, some of the studies they did were with children with autism as well. And one of the studies that showed a direct correlation between sustained periods of shared enjoyment, where both people, it's like joint attention with enjoyment sort of, wrapped around it, for those sustained periods of times, starts to trigger oxytocin production in children's brains and the parents' brains. And so it deepens those bonds. Of course, oxytocin is that chemical that's produced during breastfeeding and those times of early bonding. But that
Falling in love, right?
Yeah, basically you're falling in love with your caregiver. Dr. Greenspan used to talk about that, and that's really what that process is, of sharing enjoyment, continually sort of, I always say it's these little moments of falling in love when you're playing, and it sparks that oxytocin, it deepens that connection, and then it keeps them coming back, which sort of takes us to the sort of the next, I would say, big goal, which is that getting to that child-initiated interaction, which so often can be missing for our kids on the spectrum. It's one thing to wait for the request or the task or the demand. It's quite another to get your thoughts and feelings together and put them into an interaction, into a play interaction when things are kind of happening so fast, and there's, that can be a real challenge for kids. So that all starts with shared enjoyment, creating that oxytocin, and then inspiring our kids to get more involved in the play.
In fact, you talk about helping children to foster them being a social initiator. Talk about that.
Yes. So whenever I'm teaching my approach, we talk about it in terms of the social loop. So I say all interactions can be broken down into a social loop, which has two parts. You're either an initiator in that social loop, or you're a responder in that social loop. And so most of the time for our kids on the spectrum, they're practicing being a responder. They're getting a request, they're getting a task, they're getting a demand, whether that's in therapy or just in their regular lives or at school. They have a life that's full of practicing responding, and tends to, I shouldn't say always, but tends not to get that same practice as the initiator. And so what the play is designed to do is create these activities, these games, these interactions of high motivation for the child. And then instead of coming in and using that motivation to request specific things, is we leave space.
Yeah.
So we create this game, we create it as fun. I'm like the best toy in the room. I'm the thing that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right? And then I just don't tell you what to do.
Yeah.
I sit back, I create space, and I wait. And so in the beginning with a lot of these kids, it's this sort of slow process because they're not used to it.
Yeah.
And you might have like one loop in a 2-hour period where they're the initiator. But then over time, they start to get the hang of it. They flex that muscle, they work that circuit in their brain, and they can become stronger initiators. But that's what I mean by social native, that they're the ones formulating their thoughts without somebody telling them what to do or say, and they're actually impacting the evolution of whatever game they're in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Shannon referenced earlier in the show how she really didn't know how to play with Jem, when he was younger. And I got to say the same thing about Wyatt. I didn't know how to engage him with play. I couldn't because he had behaviors, particularly repetitive behaviors. And I want to ask you about that because, and then just comment on that as regards to my son. But how do you turn exclusive and repetitious behavior into interaction?
With a lot of patience is the first thing you need, and accepting that we don't really understand what all these behaviors are, right? And so I think traditionally in the past, the sort of the prevailing wisdom was, well, we need to shape these into something or stop them, and we're not where we were 50 years ago, but I still don't believe that we really understand, and so when we don't necessarily understand, stopping them isn't always the wisest move when you're trying to promote interaction and relationship, because that might be a very important thing to that particular child. So we take a different approach where we do one of two things really. Either we make space for that child to do whatever it is they need to do till they've completed it, and we will either try to recreate something similar for ourselves away from them, sort of mirroring alongside of them. Sometimes the kids won't want that, and they really just want you to sit aside, and so we'll just give control around that, and I'll sit back and I'll wait. And I'll just create a place where they can feel accepted enough to do what they need to do. As long as it's not hurting anybody or destroying any property, we're okay. And what we find is that they're able to complete that, whatever that is, that cycle. They get whatever they need out of it. They come out the other end, and you'll see these like clean breaks where looks like they're going to be lining these things up for the rest of their life, and then all of a sudden they're done and they're really kind of ready to go. And then you get these amazing interactions.
Yeah, with my son, I didn't know what I was doing when I did this. His repetitive behavior is playing with water. Yeah. So when he was a toddler, he would, well, first of all, he was very into tactile sensory, and he loved finger paint. Yeah. So I would put him in a swim diaper, put him outside, and he would finger paint. Yeah. It would be all over him, all over the paper. And then he had a stem of splashing water. He still does. Yeah. And I put a paintbrush in his hand and dipping the paintbrush, right? And now he's a brilliant artist. We have a friend, the Shepherd family, their son Logan was a stemmer, put drumsticks in his hand. He's playing with rock and roll bands all over the world.
Yeah, shaping that and channeling. It's exactly right,
Shaping it, And like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. It was a lucky accident.
That's fantastic. Well, learn from those accidents, because I think it's part of that parental instinct is you want to, you don't necessarily want to create conflict with your child, especially if it's something that's not really, it's not burning down the house or anything.
Right.
It's splashing some paint around. We can clean that up. And so kudos to you for that. And as you were talking, an example of how this can morph into really amazing interactions over time, too, with these other sort of stems and behaviors that don't necessarily translate into painting or drumming or something like that. One little boy I worked with, this had to be 10, 15 years ago, he had this stem where he was just lining up farm animals, and you could not touch them. Sometimes you couldn't even look at them. He was very controlling around it. He had lots of experience of people trying to stop it and take these things from him. And so I gave him lots of space, and the only thing I could really do is I could take all these sort of rejected toys and I could line those up. So I had like a broken car and a letter, and he had the animals. One day, he got a set of jungle animals, and I got to have the farm animals. It was this huge deal.
Yeah.
And so there I am. I'm just doing the same thing as he's doing, lining them up, touching, saying what the names of the animals were, and not pushing into his zone, letting him have that place that he clearly needed. Fast forward a few months, maybe 3 months, he got another set of animals. I think they were jungle dinosaurs, and I got the jungle animals. And at that point, it felt a little more, like he wasn't so controlling. So I'd start like doing little shows with my animals when he would look over, and at first he shut it down.
Yeah.
And then I tried again, he became more accepting, more accepting. Fast forward a few months, our animals are all mixed together. We're playing these huge 20-minute, half-hour, hour-long games with something that was completely encapsulated in his STEM world.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's having that patience, having that ability to embrace it and seek understanding for it
Right.
and move with it. Yeah.
Well, and we were talking before, because as you mentioned that Wyatt's a painter, that drawing sometimes can be a great outlet. It can be a great way to communicate and foster communication.
Huge.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, especially lately, because as my wife can attest, over the last couple of years, I've sort of embraced my own artistic, creative side, and so I've used it a lot more in my sessions. And sometimes it is with the kids drawing, and we're collaborating. In terms of communication support and development, what I've found is that if I can engage a child who's wanting just to watch me draw, and I can start creating this story, it gives this sort of visual focal point, and sometimes with very little, sort of prompting or even showing them what I'm sort of wanting from them, they'll just start, however they can, verbally or just with gestures, showing me what it is they want in this picture. I'm using it with a 20-year-old client of mine right now, and I'm using it with a 9-year-old client of mine. It's such a dynamic, useful platform for interaction, especially in play. Some kids, they're not as interested, but for a lot of kids and people I work with, it draws them in and gives you this nice place to build an activity that they really enjoy.
You also talk about the importance of taking your time.
Yeah, you've mentioned it several times.
Yes. In these play sessions, I like to have, a 2-hour play session is beautiful, sometimes 3 if you can, because like I said, the way that we're handling those exclusive times, that STEM behaviors, we're giving that a lot of control and a lot of sort of time to be what it needs to be. So having that 2-hour session, you don't feel this pressure, this push that a lot of parents and quite frankly a lot of therapists feel to get this kid to perform, right? I'm not going into my sessions thinking, what can I get this child to do?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what can I inspire them to want to do with me?
Yeah.
The mark of a effective play therapy session isn't so much that I went in and got a child to do something. It's what did they do because they liked that I was there, that they wanted me to be a part of things. That's where the real sort of meat and effectiveness is of this, and that might take 3 weeks worth of sessions to get to where you're right there, because you're really laying the groundwork, showing them that you're there to understand them.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your program.
Yeah,
Sure.
well, I wanted to say, we did a news story a little bit earlier about insurance and ABA therapy, which often is, the therapy that people are doing right now. And I'm hearing a lot of the things that you're saying. You started out ABA, but it sounds like you're more towards floor time and Greenspan now. And I just want to say, do you think that it's insurance and the way insurance is, because I think the field has changed so much. Both of us are products of both of our sons did intensive ABA, and I'm going to classify myself as like the biggest fan of ABA that there is.
Yeah.
But I also want to say that 9/10 of my son's program was people who came in the door and played in the way that you're talking about with him. That his ABA, he might do something for 7 seconds and then they were playing intensely what he wanted to play.
Great.
I don't know where in the field suddenly, I feel like with insurance and you have to show us that you did this many things in this hour or we don't pay, that we lost some of the data that we understood about that enjoyment piece.
Right.
Because ABA is based in, if it's not reinforcing, then you're not doing ABA.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, I feel like it's insurance. Do you feel that also, or what do you think?
I could see that, just based on seeing, my wife is a speech therapist and she takes insurance, so I see that whole side of it. And it's about the data.
Yeah.
It's about what are you producing, are you meeting these goals? And they don't necessarily care how you get there.
Right. Right.
But that's where the emphasis is. And when, 20 some odd years ago when I was in ABA, there was an emphasis on that, and I don't know whether that was coming from the pressure of how their insurance and what they're seeing, or the school they're the education body they're reporting to. But I certainly felt pressure, and I think sometimes it might even just come from you're part of this team, and you're having to make these weekly, monthly meetings or whatever, and report on what they're doing and take these notes. You're like, oh, I kind of.
Well, we all want to see progress, but
Sure.
sometimes progress takes time.
Yes.
And you have to take the individual and their desires into account. And if you're not, I don't think you're doing good anything.
Exactly.
You're certainly not doing good ABA, you're not doing good floor time, you're not doing good play therapy.
Precisely.
But what we want people to know, because more than anything else, I think parents feel like this shortcoming of that if we don't know how to play with our children, I think there's a loss of our self-esteem as parents. And you're offering something to help parents.
Tell us
with
about
that.
your program, which is called Play.Connect.Grow.
Yeah, and we played with a few names over the years. I had been calling it developmental play therapy because that's what seemed to fit the most, because what we were doing is trying to stimulate that sort of natural developmental process that a lot of kids miss out on. So to your question about how do we help parents understand how to better play with their children, because it's hard enough for typical parents to play with their children, right? We kind of forget or something. And so if you introduce this communication barrier that often happens with autism, it can become very challenging. So one of the first things, and one of the most important things we do, is we talk about being comfortable, attitudinally and emotionally comfortable when you're with your child. So the first thing we do, I'll let them watch me play. I'll sort of give them an overview of the tenets of our play therapy, reduce the number of questions, focus on creating opportunities, trust that your child will step through that door. First few times we put a parent in the playroom after they've seen me and I've given some, I'm about to train them, I'm looking for where are they the most uncomfortable. Usually, not always, but usually can be around something that quote unquote looks autistic, like their child might do one of their behaviors or something, or they might have a meltdown about something, and you just see all those triggers, right? So they come out, and that's what our feedback session is about, right? Is about nothing gets dealt with until we talk about that. Because what we're trying to do is find out, well, okay, so why does that make you so uncomfortable? And understandably so, but let's explore that so that we can deflate it, and you can go back in there and recognize, oh, when my child is ignoring me and lining up their cars or doing whatever it is they do, that's not going to go to my future fears of what's my child going to be like as an adult? Is he going to be, because that's what it triggers, right? And so going in there and sort of smoothing that out to the point where they can be in there in the face of some of their child's behaviors that are usually triggering and think, you know what, this is okay, this is not serving me right now. If I want to worry about that, I can do it after. And at least set that to the side, if not sort of solve it all together for them. So that they can be a comfortable presence, they can be more effective. Because if they're in their head thinking about that, they're going to miss the little
So it sounds like you're really doing therapy with parents.
It's like more akin to coaching, I would say. But yeah, it can be very therapeutic. And I know for me personally, my play sessions are often therapeutic. I often have realizations about myself. So those little moments when we're with our kids and something triggers inside of us, that's a sign. That's like, here's something for you to look at. And so if we can do that effectively, we become a more effective resource for our kids. And so that's number one, front and center. Sort of surrounded by that are a host of fairly straightforward, simple techniques that's based on, well, what is your child into? What do they love? How can your presence add value to that? And once you've done that, then it's just about understanding when they're at their highest points of motivation, and that's where you leave space around that.
So do you do this mostly in person, or do you do some of this virtually?
Mostly in person. Over the pandemic, we had to sort of, as everybody did, had to evolve a little bit. And I, skeptically so, tried to do some play sessions online, and they worked lovely, actually. I was pretty surprised. One in particular was with a little boy who was even nonverbal. His mom had to sort of sit in to kind of help a little bit. And it was just about Pete the Cat book. And then it was just me reading it in funny ways and him telling me to continue or making whatever communication with his mom. And we did that, and it was beautiful. It was really effective.
Wonderful.
So how do they find out about your program? How do they access it?
So the easiest thing to do would be to go to our website, Play.Connect.Grow.com. There they'll find some videos and some explanations of things. And I've also put together a play course, an online course that has quizzes, video examples, articles. That's a one-time, you buy it, it's yours, and you have a dashboard where you can actually keep notes on your sessions if you so choose. So you can have a little sort of bank of anecdotal notes if you need. And yeah, it's just meant to be something that teach parents and even professionals just another set of tools.
Right.
Yeah.
And once you've bought that, so mom could do it and dad could do it later on. You could give it to the babysitter.
Totally, absolutely.
Aunt Bert, who's coming to
Exactly.
visit. And
Yes, and it's meant to be, it's not jargony. It's
Good.
not meant for professionals
We're
necessarily.
anti-jargon.
Yeah.
Right. It's very
Jargon of the day.
and I try to make it funny and readable and all that. So
Right.
I'm pretty proud of it. I've had a lot of really good feedback on it, and people find that it helps them get to that real play. That's that heart.
And what does that cost for somebody to do the whole program?
For that, it's just $129, and you get to
very
keep it.
reasonable.
Yeah. And actually, I put together a code for you guys that get an
did?
additional
Oh,
20% off.
Okay, so what code do they need to do? Did I miss that?
It's just all caps, Talk Autism. I think
Talk
is what
Autism.
and it'll give them 20% off.
There
the
you go.
price.
20% off.
Yeah.
I
Like it
wish I had had this when Wyatt was younger. I think it's just brilliant. I'm such a believer in this approach to uncover. I mean, it can lead to incredible things.
Incredible things. And I just applaud you guys for talking about playing to your kids' strengths. You know, there's a wonderful quote, I'm going to butcher it, but it's it was something about, you know, with talking specifically about autism, is that the problem is not that you can't fit a square peg in a round hole, you can, but you ruin the peg. So,
I love
like,
that.
if
I
we
wish you could
move,
find that quote.
I will.
All right,
I'll email
send
it to you.
me.
And then the last thing also for your listeners, if they just email me at Aaron@Play.Connect.Grow.com, they can schedule a free half hour. I can talk to them a bit
Okay.
more in depth. And
There
they
you
can
go.
move forward.
20% off
Yeah,
if you
20%
put Talk
Autism, all one in caps. Yeah.
And you can do a free half-hour consultation if you email you at Aaron. Say it again for me, because
Aaron@Play.Connect.Grow.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention, because you referenced your wife, it is your wife, Kim,
Yes.
who I had met
Hi,
at an
honey.
autism conference, gosh, like a decade ago at
Yes,
least.
yeah.
And I loved her Panda Pals
Mm-hmm.
app. And so we had her on the show.
Many
and
years
then
ago.
she reached out to me and told me about your work, and that's
Yeah.
how you came to be here. So your wife also is in the field
She's
doing
incredible.
work.
Incredible work.
You're both light workers in the field of autism.
thank you.
And you know, it said in your bio that in 1999 you knew this was your calling, and we're just really grateful that you do the work you do for our kids.
I really appreciate that. I love it. It's been,
You can tell.
yeah.
It's great to have you here. We're going to pause for a couple of minutes, and we're going to welcome our second guest. Ed Lynch is going to be here with us from
Mychal's Place.
Mychal's Learning Place.
Mychal's Learning
So
Place.
stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And our next guest, we're very happy to have here. Ed Lynch is the founder and executive director of Mychal's Learning Place. I'd like to tell you a little bit about him. Mychal's Learning Place, that's spelled M-Y-C-H-A-L. It was inspired by his daughter, Mychal. Ed opened it in Hawthorne, California in June of 2002. So over 21 years, Mychal has provided the support, training, opportunities to youth and young adults with developmental disabilities to build their independence and pursue their goals. And they have an after-school and an adult day program. They also have 2 social enterprises, which I wasn't aware of, Mychal's Bakery and Coffee and Mychal's Print and Embroidery. And that helps provide employment opportunities for these individuals. Ed, welcome to the show.
Having me.
Oh, I didn't, now I can hear you.
Now
but
I can
couldn't
hear you.
I just want to know, is it Mychal or is it Mychal?
It's Mychal.
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 Okay.
Right. And, I
yeah.
didn't know this was inspired by your daughter. Just tell us a bit about her.
Oh, I love talking about my daughter. So Mikey was born typical, no issues, reaching her plateaus, and then some neurological issues were discovered, and she passed away at 7.5 years old with really no label. And today I don't look at our students with labels, I look at them as individuals. And she inspired me to want to do more and find places where individuals like her can come and feel loved, challenged, respected, treated with dignity, and have the bar set very high.
I just want to jump through the
And
screen and hug you.
Thank you.
what
If she
an
was here today,
amazing
she'd be 34.
Wow.
Wow.
What a legacy she is living through all this work. That just made me so emotional, Ed. What an amazing dad you are. Really.
I'm a work in progress.
Aren't we all, Ed?
I
Aren't we all?
appreciate that, but I'm a work in progress, and there's not a day that goes by that I'm not grateful she chose me to be her dad, that I get to do what I get to do, that I get to create something that will be here long after I'm gone. This has never been about me, so I'm really grateful and blessed that I get to do what I do every day.
Well, let's talk about what you do. Let's first talk about the after-school and adult day programs.
So the after-school program was the first program we started, and we were at a church in Hawthorne for about 9.5 years, which was wonderful. They gave us free space, but it had a lot of limitations, and there was really never going to be any growth or have the opportunities to do what I really wanted to do with our students and provide those opportunities. So we moved into a building in Hawthorne, 10,000 square foot building, did all the build out on it to our specifications of what we wanted. But what we realized was, the after school programs Monday through Friday, 2 to 6, and some, extended hours during the holidays and summers. But what we noticed, the building was empty in the mornings. So the writing was on the wall, we need to start an adult program. And so the after school program, social rec, life skills training, independent living skills, a place where they can just be who they are, and no one's trying to fix them. We don't do any therapies whatsoever at Mychal's, and that has been a good thing for us. It's worked well. And so when we added the adult program, it was really geared on independence, employment, quality of life that we all get to have, that our students, our participants don't get to have. With an 85% unemployment rate, everything is wrong with that. And so the adult program then turned into adding a couple of social enterprises, and we continue to go from there. Active waiting list for the adult program, not enough job partners, which we're actually starting to address now that COVID is kind of over. That's been a real wrench in our side.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Ed, I'm just exploring this world. My son Wyatt is 21 now. He's got 1 more year at his high school vocational program. So for the last 6 months, I've been visiting these day programs, and I'm well aware of the waiting list. I wish you were closer because I love the sound of your program. It just sounds fantastic. Tell us a little bit more about the social enterprises. You've got the bakery and coffee and the print and embroidery.
Yeah, so the first component we added was the bakery. So at our building, we've got a wonderful kitchen space. It's more like a family kitchen. And then Janet started working with one of our students, Ryan, making chocolate chip cookies. And they're really good. And then we said, well, why don't we expand into offering barista service? So we could go out into the community, do pop-up events, corporate partners that we have through the relationships we have. I hired somebody with cafe, coffee experience, and she kind of took it to the next level. And then through support of foundations, we built out our kitchen into a commercial bakery. So cookies, cake pops, muffins, scones, almond bars, loaves. I mean, it's delicious, and I'll put it up against anybody's. And the thing about it is, if you were to walk into our bakery, the students are doing all of it. It's not this, you know, token special needs individual waving at you and, you know, greeting you, and that's it. These guys are using the oven, they're mixing the measuring, they're using knives, they're doing every part of the bakery. And for me, that's our philosophy. I want our students to do everything. They maintain our building. This is their building. This is not my building. This is your second home. You need to treat it like a second home, and so you're responsible for keeping it that way. And then we wrote a grant for a food truck. So we got a food truck that was for coffee service and selling our baked goods, so prepackaged baked goods. We'd make them, we package them, we'd sell them at the food truck and pop up at local events. Since COVID, that truck has been sitting in our parking lot, quiet. But most recently, a little over a year ago, August was a year, we opened up a cafe space at Torrance Memorial Specialty Center, which is part of Torrance Memorial Hospital. We were going to them to see about selling baked goods, and they'd asked about the food truck because they were going to have to close one of their small cafes, one of the off-site cafes. So I said, could we see the space? And that was on a Thursday. They took us down there, and I just kind of looked at them. I said, oh, we could do this. And on Tuesday, we had the keys, and we were opening up on Wednesday.
Wow.
Not having a clue what we were doing, but enough smarts, enough support from the community to bring in the people that know more than we know to make it successful. And we've been there almost a year and a half. And it's wonderful. You walk in, you're greeted by the students, they're making your coffee drinks, we're selling the baked goods, they're making your breakfast items, sandwiches, salads, parfaits, handling the money, doing all of it.
Isn't that great?
Well, tell us about
Yeah,
the printing and embroidery, because if I were closer, I would be going to the cafe, but I'm not. But I bet I could throw some printing business your way. So tell us about it.
I'm actually at the print shop right now because the reception, the internet reception is better here than it is at my Hawthorne location. So we opened the embroidery business like 2018-ish. I went to a local community event where they did they had a step and repeat, and they took your picture, and then while you were there, they printed it on a mug. And which I thought was rather strange that they're going to give me a mug with my face on it, because I'm not going to drink from that. And nobody should have to look at my face when they're drinking coffee or tea or something. So needless to say, I left the mug there. I never took it home. But what I got from it is I was watching them make the mugs. And I said, we could do that. We can add this to become part of our adult program, and we could start providing this training. So within 2 weeks, I bought the equipment, included it with our adult program. Jose, who's behind me, his side hustle was doing mugs, tote bags, t-shirt printing, and more. So now you've got somebody in-house that knows about the business, maybe doesn't know the equipment that we have now, because if I showed you the equipment, this is a professional, this is a business, right? And then we wrote a couple of grants, fundraising events. We raised quite a bit of capital and purchased some direct-to-garment printers and some embroidery machines. And it's not silk screen, so you don't have the chemical smell, you don't have the waste, it's environmentally unfriendly. This is direct-to-garment, it prints right to the t-shirt, or it prints right to the hoodie. And then the embroidery, you can embroider on just about anything. And so one of our board members gave us space, we're off to the races. So now we made this part of our day program and started bringing in students, rotating students. And then we had to leave that space. And then a year ago, actually last week, we moved into the space I'm at here in Redondo Beach. and we actually own the property now, free and clear because of donors and foundation support. James, who's right behind, he just walked right by me. In the adult program, he's been a full-time employee here at the print shop for over 2 years. So he was an employee over at the Inglewood location, and he's an employee here. He runs the print machines. He knows how to service them, prep them, load them. It's a beautiful thing to see. So if anybody's in Redondo Beach and wants to see it in action, it's really very special. And our partners are corporate partners. I mean, these aren't three T-shirt orders. I mean, they're completing an order right now of 1,200 shirts for Northrop Grumman.
Wow.
That's great.
Yes, yeah. So
you don't want
that's
my
how
little
you can.
piddly business. Because I'm looking
Yeah,
for my
Shannon.
business.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I was saying my business is too small for you. I would be looking for like 30 T-shirts. Might be too small.
No. There are no small orders because the beauty of direct to garment is you're not making screens. So you
Okay.
can do small orders. The point of the 1,200 shirt order was that we're a business, right? We're a
Okay.
nonprofit, we're a business. And you as a customer, you guys are familiar with our population. If you're not and you walk in here, your life has changed.
Okay.
Because you see the students doing all of it, engaging, just being part of the family and team where you don't see a label and you don't see that. That's
Amazing.
the labels that we put on our kids. You know what I mean? It's Johnny. It's not autistic Johnny or Down syndrome. It's just Johnny. Can we
Amen.
just honor Johnny?
Absolutely.
So tell us, you've got some big things coming up. You got some events, an art show on February in a week and a half, and my son's going to be in that, and a luncheon on May 20th.
Excellent.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So we did the art show pre-COVID, and what in the beginning it was a all just community artists, well-known artists, valuable artwork, and just to raise funds for Mychal's. And the first year was a hit. It was a 3-day event, and and then I started to really think about who should this be about? This should not be about Bob, the professional artist and photographer down the block. This should be about the students and the individuals with developmental disabilities that are trying to do something with their artwork. The guest you had before, or the dog artwork, was beautiful.
That's her son.
That's
I
my
love
son.
that black. That blue one is beautiful. That would look so good on a tote bag.
That's
Sorry.
my son's Wyatt's work, and we're going to be bringing
Beautiful.
we're going to be bringing some of his work, some canvas reprints, because all the originals have sold. Thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
He gets commissioned, but we're
Beautiful.
very excited to take part in this, and so that's on February 11th. What time, Ed?
10 to 4. It's a Saturday open house. There's no cost to get in. It's to support the artists that are there. And
Great.
only, I would say, maybe 3 or 4 are coming from Mychal's. There's another 15, 16 coming. They're from outside the community.
Okay.
And
Because
one
it's
of them
about
might-
that.
And one of them
It's
is
about
Wyatt
that.
Jackson. And tell us about the luncheon on May 20th.
So the luncheon's our biggest event of the year, biggest fundraising event of the year currently. We have another one we think is going to surpass that at some point, but not this year. It's a fundraising luncheon. It's at the Westdrift Hotel in Manhattan Beach. Silent live auction, paddle race, entertainment by our students. All the baked goods for dessert are made by our students. It's just a wonderful family event. Low lift, not your typical nighttime event where there's a lot of drinking going on. I mean, there's wine and beer there, but it's not the same as a late night event.
Right.
This is our 21st one we're doing.
Great. And they can find out about all of this where?
You can go to mychals.org, mychals.org. And then there's links there for social enterprise. There's links there for events. You can sign up for the newsletter if you're interested, and you can just info@mychals.org. And we'll put you on the list and keep you up to date. We're not going to bombard you with emails and newsletters, usually once a month, possibly a blast in the middle if there's a success story that we'd like to share with people. Just to keep people more involved and create that awareness, because the business as well with the social enterprise, the cafe, the print shop, it's that awareness, right?
Yeah.
It's the awareness to try to address the 85% unemployment rate. It's the awareness of showing somebody when they walk in who maybe doesn't have much familiarity with special needs, seeing that somebody's capable and able. So maybe if somebody walks into your office one day that reminds you of that situation, you'll think twice. It changes the culture at a job site. It opens up the eyes to society that they're just everyone. We're all the same. There's, does anybody have a label on your name? I mean, nobody has a label on my name. So why are we doing that, right? How do we get rid of that? And the most exciting thing is we're actually looking to open up our own brick and mortar cafe in Redondo Beach.
Amazing.
And we're excited about that because can you imagine walking into a cafe where there's 80% of the people that are working there and training there are our participants.
I can totally
and
imagine.
doing everything.
Absolutely.
It's going to be
You can
amazing.
imagine it.
All right,
It's
but-
going to
It's
happen.
going to be amazing.
It's going to
But
happen.
here's the
Absolutely.
$64,000 question. Probably much more money than that. So here's the question,
Yes.
though. Is there any thought to creating Mychal's Place other than in Hawthorne, California? Are you talking about franchising this, making or writing a book that's a manual so that somebody in Florida who says, I want to do what you're doing, Ed, but I don't know how to, that it shows them how you did it? Because we need we need to multiply you, Ed.
Well, not me.
Yeah, you.
Yes,
You
one of
do.
my wife would say there's only one Ed. We don't need two Eds. So actually, it's funny you should say that because we're actively working on that. And
Okay.
I don't want to necessarily do a franchise because it's my daughter's name.
Right.
And if we partner with somebody that does something that
Yeah.
you and I would dread and have feared our whole lives with kids,
Yeah.
I would be devastated by that. So we are sharing our information with everybody that wants it within reason, of course. I mean, I can't spend 10 hours a week working with one person. I do have a colleague in Plano, Texas, from a place called My Possibilities. They're Mychals on steroids. They are big thinkers. They are about jobs. They're about housing. And again, a colleague of mine, he came out for a couple of days and we're giving him the information that we have here that he could take back there because he has the corporate partners. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the 30 order shirt or the 12 order shirt, right? Because that's an order. It's the big ones that will help keep your doors open and bring bigger revenue into the organization. Particularly if you want to sustain, you have to run it as a business.
Yeah.
Again, all the proceeds from the business go back to the nonprofit and for programs. And we've talked about the cafe with, I've had so many meetings, you guys. It takes work though. I mean, it really does take work and surrounding yourself with the people that know more than you. I know this much, honestly. This is how much I know. I'm not an expert in anything. But what I don't know, I bring the people around me that know more than me and give them some ownership in this. So they feel like their part has meaning and they've made a difference as well. I'm not a lawyer, don't want to be a lawyer. I'm not an accountant, don't want to be an accountant. All of these things that I'm common sense smart, okay? I grew up in Jersey, I'm common sense smart, but that's not, bring those people around me and those people want to help. So I've got somebody actually working on the franchise owner's manual for the print shop as we speak. And he's a volunteer, 70-year-old retired businessman, approached us.
All right, will I be seeing you in a week and a half?
I will be there all day long.
All right, I'll be there too, and so will Mr. Wyatt Jackson.
Absolutely. I can't wait. It's going to be great.
All right, well, Ed, thank you so much for joining us. What so lovely that this was inspired by your daughter, and look at the legacy. Look what you've accomplished.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's special for me. It's special for me. I love being here. There's not a day I don't want to come to work. It's not a job. I mean, it truly is exciting to constantly think about growth and expansion rather than being complacent. I can't imagine sitting in my office and saying, okay, I think we've done enough now. I'm just going to sit back and, make sure we pay our bills. It's not in my DNA.
Good for you. Well, and good for all of us.
Good for all of us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed.
And again, directing people to, what is your website, Ed?
www.mychals, Mychal.org, and that's mychals.org.
We have it up on the screen right
But
now.
for people who are, we podcast,
right.
mychals.org.
Oh,
Did I get it wrong? mychals.
yes. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I love talking about Mychals, and anybody can reach out if they'd like.
Thank you,
so
Ed.
much.
You're an inspiration, and so is your
You
organization.
take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ladies. See you next week.
See ya.
Well, we've gone way over, but it was so worth it.
Wow, what great guests,
What
huh?
great guests. Wonderful. And we had mentioned yesterday or day before yesterday that we've got a big event coming up here at the
Yeah.
Autism Network. We want to let you guys all know about that for April. You know, we try to do something extra or special in April.
Of course,
always.
Autism Awareness Month.
And we've batted this idea around a lot, and we just didn't have the means to do it before, but we think we have the right studio this year. We are going to do, it is tentatively called the Autism Network 44-hour live podcast marathon. We're going to go on the air at 3 o'clock on April 4th, and we are going to do our damnedest to stay on live until 11 a.m. on Thursday morning.
So starting on a Monday?
Starting on a Tuesday.
Tuesday
So
to
44 hours.
Thursday.
And obviously 44 hours because it is 1 in 44 right now. The numbers.
Right, okay. I get it now.
So
I
that's
did not
why-
make that connection, but
That's
thank
why
you.
44 hours.
Okay.
And obviously we're going to have some partners to do that with. We're reaching out to other organizations that they were giving people an opportunity
Like
to
who?
take over.
Do you have any, you know?
Like, we know that Spectrum Laboratory already has said that they want to take over an hour. We
okay.
know that the Ed Asner Family
course, I
Center is
figured
going to want
that.
to take over.
Right.
We're talking with TACA and many other organizations to see if they would like to take over an hour at a time. But I will be here a lot. Dr. Grant Pichet will be here a lot. You
And
will
I'll be here.
And it sounds like we may even have Wyatt here for part of it.
Shannon said, who do you want to come on? And I thought of all these fabulous people I could have on, like Lisa Gibbons and other people. But I said, you know who I really want to have on? I want to have Wyatt and his teacher, Paola.
There we go.
So
44 hours. I'm calling it.
and you don't even drink coffee.
No, I don't drink coffee. I'm going to sleep, but I'm going to sleep here.
Okay.
You know? But I may not be able to shower is the biggest problem. But we're looking into some possibilities for that. But in any case, we're really excited about it. I'm calling it the information and inspiration extravaganza. Because that's our whole watchwords at the Autism Network is we want to provide information and inspiration like we did today.
Yeah.
So be looking for that, and I'm sure that sometime during that 44 hours you'll find a time to tune in. And I think especially towards the end that if I'm able to put two words together that make sense, I will be impressed with myself. So.
God bless you. I drink a lot of coffee. I couldn't do it without it.
Well, I'm not saying I'm not going to yawn and that I won't be sleepy. And I am going to get rest. I mean, people are going to take it over for a while. And, you know, we already have some people booked and some surprise guests that I think everybody will be very excited about. So it should be really, really fun and an opportunity for the autism community to come together and for there to be, it's free information for people at home. There'll be live opportunities where, I mean, the whole thing's going to be live, but live experts that you can write in and ask questions. So I think it will be spectacular.
Sounds
We're looking forward to it.
fantastic, Shannon.
So tomorrow, don't forget to watch the latest episode of Stories from the Spectrum. This is our newest podcast that is only the voices of those that identify as being on the spectrum, neurodiverse or neurodivergent, whatever terms people like to use. It is only their voices, and it's the thing I'm the most proud of right now.
Yeah, you should be. It's
and
beautiful.
I'm only proud of the fact that we have made a space for it. It is not my voice, but it is the voice of some really incredible people who are paid for their efforts, and that makes me really happy. So check that out tomorrow, and then we're back on Monday with more shows all next week. So until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me, and I'll see you next month.
Bye-bye for now.